My mom blew a ton of my cash on my spoiled sister's wedding, so I decided to freeze the account and ruin the whole thing. I'm dealing with a strange situation in my life right now. Honestly, it's not an issue. I'm just stuck in a tough spot. My mom and sister have been taking advantage of me for years, and now they've gone too far with their exploitation. I'm really torn here. I want to cut ties, but that feels like it would just push them into a tough spot, and that seems pretty harsh. At the same time, I'm just over constantly giving in to what they want. I'm a 38-year-old female, married with 2 kids, and I've been living in Seattle for the past 6 years since my wedding. I'm from Atlanta originally. Growing up was tough because my parents split up, and my dad walked out, blaming my mom for cheating. The debate is still ongoing about whether it was merely an accusation or if there was some truth to it, especially since mom never remarried. I was 10 years old and my sister was just 5 when my parents decided to split up. Apparently, my father had his doubts about my sister, which ultimately resulted in a divorce. In the divorce settlement, he allowed mom to keep the house we grew up in while he moved out. My dad covered my education costs, but he didn't do the same for my sister. He never provided any child support for her. And honestly, I can't figure out why mom never went after it. I suppose that's why everyone bought into dad's claim that my sister isn't really his daughter. My dad was pretty much absent during most of my childhood. He would sometimes drop by my school to cover the fees and bring me some gifts. When I started high school, I reached out to him. And from that point on, he's been a constant presence in my life. He actually showed up to my wedding, even though my mom was totally against it. Throughout the years, I've developed a stronger connection with my dad compared to my mom. He actually made 2 trips to Seattle after I moved here. Unfortunately, this didn't last long, and he was diagnosed with a terminal illness, leading to his passing last year. My mom wasn't a fan of how close I was with my dad, and now she's acting distant with me. On top of everything else, my dad went ahead and named me as his heir, which just fueled her anger even more. He tied the knot many years after splitting from my mom, but he didn't have any kids with his second wife. He always claimed he had only one daughter, and that was me. It's pretty clear that my mom and sister weren't fans of me since dad had a soft spot for me, and I ended up with his $400,000 trust fund. This was about way more than just the inheritance. Throughout my childhood, my dad covered my education expenses, which allowed me to attend a better school, go to a more prestigious college than my sister, and ultimately enjoy a more favorable life thanks to that financial support. I was just 10 when they split up, and that's when the child support and my education funds started rolling in. I was just 12, so my mom didn't really have much say in the matter. The fees for education went straight to the respective school and college. Mom used some of the child support money for my sister and other household expenses. Since I wasn't a naive kid, my mom made sure I was happy so I wouldn't spill the beans to anyone. Honestly, I can't claim my mom and sister were outright evil, but it's clear they weren't exactly fond of me. They had their own tight bond while I just kind of floated around in the background. Honestly, I was pretty clever. Smart not only in school, but also pretty sharp as a kid. Definitely not the type to let anyone take advantage or push me around. I believe that was also why my mom could never mistreat me. Right now, I'm dealing with the situation involving the $400,000 my dad left for me. Ever since my mom and sister found out about this, they've been on my case to lend them money for all sorts of things. Honestly, this isn't the first time they've tried to connect with me about money. Since I began my job, I've been there for them. As my earnings increased, their demands followed suit. I really don't have any obligation to them, but I choose to help out since they're family and their financial situation isn't great. My mom's a cashier at the local market, and my sister's all about sales at a gift shop. Honestly, they barely make a fraction of what I do, so I feel like I should step in and lend a hand. We may not have a deep emotional bond, but they've never treated me poorly or with malice. I really hope you all understand where I'm coming from, and that I'm not just making things more complicated with my emotions. A few months back, my mom reached out to tell me she was thinking about renovating our house. The walls, ceilings, and floor have all taken a beating over the years. Since Dad left, the place has really gone downhill. The walls are peeling, the wiring is a mess, and the ceilings are falling apart at the edges. We just couldn't scrape together enough cash to keep the house in shape. She mentioned that it was getting tough for them to stay in that house. When the thunderstorm hits or the rain pours, It honestly feels like the whole place might just fall apart. She mentioned that she went to the bank to inquire about a loan, but the interest rate is simply too steep to handle. I totally got what she was trying to say. She was looking for cash to help me fix up the house. The conversation was super awkward since I was fully aware of what she wanted, yet neither of us brought it up directly. Following that chat, I began to just skip her calls. She rarely calls me. It's usually just once a month. She definitely stepped up her game and called me like 3 or 4 times last month. So when I finally picked up her call, she mentioned that living in that house was getting sketchy since it was falling apart during bad weather. This time, she was direct and straight to the point, asking me for the cash. She said she'd come back to me piece by piece. I inquired about the amount of money she was anticipating. She mentioned 100 grand. I totally lost it. I mentioned that I'm not in a position to lend a lot of money. She dropped a subtle clue about the inheritance cash. I was really annoyed, but I chose not to dive deeper into the discussion about the trust fund money. I mentioned that $50 zeros in is the highest amount I can lend out. She was on board. Eventually, I came to understand that I acted too rashly by letting my defenses down and offering $50,000. I could have totally brushed it off, but now that I mentioned it, I felt obligated to help her out with the cash. I really wasn't comfortable with the idea of lending out that much cash. My husband thinks it would be a good idea to lend the money in parts and keep an eye on the house progress before handing over the next chunk. I let my mom know that I plan to send her $50K in parts. I had my inactive account from Atlanta. I set that up and moved the $10K into that account. Then I gave my mom access to it. She wanted to know why I didn't just send the money straight to her account. I came up with a pretty weak excuse for that. This was totally my husband's brainchild. I'm curious to find out how effective this really is. I'm not really counting on her to return the money, but I guess we'll see what happens. Update 1. I'm struggling to understand how my mom and sister attempted to pull a fast one on me for some quick cash. It's been 2 months since I began lending my mom money for the house renovation. I've already put in $20,000 and I'm done, not giving another cent after this. I always suspected they were only friendly because of my cash, but I never thought they'd go this far with the lies just to squeeze some money from me. If they had been honest with me, it wouldn't have stung as much. Recently, I found out that my sister is tying the knot. It wasn't from my family, but rather from a friend I went to school with. So my friend's husband is a wedding planner, and my sister has reached out to his agency to get everything sorted for her big wedding. Pretty exciting stuff. For sure, that's how they refer to the upcoming wedding. It seems my sister might be unaware that I'm buddies with them. Obviously, a wedding that costs $50K is definitely not any less impressive than a lavish one. It really stings to hear about your sister's wedding from people who aren't her. Honestly, I didn't even know there was an invitation. Totally left out of the loop. I was under the impression it would be a small, cozy gathering, but my friend mentioned that there were about 100 people on the guest list. It really hit hard that I couldn't reach that 100 mark. It was one thing to feel down about it, but what really got to me was the financial aspect. Where did she even find the cash to pull off a wedding like that? This place is seriously one of the best in town. You get unlimited food and drinks, plus the decorations and flowers are just top-notch. Can't beat that vibe. I took a look at the bank account where I was transferring funds to my mom for her so-called renovation project. The bank account was totally drained. I hit up mom to see if the renovation work had kicked off yet. She agreed and the renovation company is on board, but the actual work hasn't kicked off yet. Luce just couldn't handle her lies anymore. Up until that point, I had no solid proof that they were genuinely using my money for her wedding, but it really grossed me out to think they were splurging on her big day while simultaneously asking me for cash to renovate the house. At one point, I seriously considered hopping on a flight to Atlanta to see what the deal was, but then I thought better of it. Not really worth the hassle. I reached out to my aunt, my dad's sister, who lived just a few blocks from my mom's place. I was curious if she had any idea about my sister's wedding. She agreed, but she wasn't included in the invite either. It's totally understandable that my mom isn't really into my dad's side of the family, and mentioned that my sister's wedding was the hot topic around the neighborhood. Honestly, just a few years back, their place was falling apart with no upkeep, and they were both hustling hard just to make ends meet. Fast forward to now, and they've got a shiny new house and an extravagant wedding to boot. This totally made me feel dizzy and disoriented. Mom mentioned that the house still needed repairs, but my aunt insisted it was shining with fresh paint. So I just remembered that about 6 months ago, my mom asked me for $20,000 for her knee surgery. I reached out to my mom to get the scoop on where she had her knee transplant done. I told a fib about a friend needing the orthopedics info for her dad's knee surgery. She stumbled over her words and admitted she couldn't recall the name. I asked her for the hospital or clinic details, but she seemed really hesitant to share anything. She totally didn't see that coming. She totally faked a network problem and just ended the call. So I tried calling her again, but her phone was off for a bit and then it just went to voicemail. I sent her a message too, but it just sat there unread for days on end. I totally got that she was being dishonest. The cash I handed over for the transplant got funneled into the house makeover, and the funds she's now using for the renovation are really being spent on my sister's dream wedding. They also mentioned that my sister's engagement took place on the front lawn of my house, and they decorated everything with lilies while wine was overflowing. I seriously felt like I was in the dark, completely unaware that they were living it up while putting on this whole act of being broke just to drain my wallet. So the next move I made was to just ghost them. I stopped funding that account. I totally ignored my mom when she called me. I just left her message on read. So my sister, who hasn't bothered to call me in ages, finally decides to reach out, but I didn't pick up either. I'm over it, and I'm not going to put up with their deceit and mind games anymore. Honestly, it's irrelevant that I make more money than they do, or that my dad left me an inheritance while they got nothing. That doesn't give them the right to take advantage of me and manipulate me with their deceitful strategies. I've committed to sabotaging my mom's special day for her little princess. Update 2. Turns out I was totally right about my mom. So when I ignored all their attempts to reach out, my mom decided to call my husband instead. Honestly, my husband can be such a buzzkill sometimes. I told him not to engage with any of their calls or texts, but when my mom called, he still answered. She broke down in tears and accused me of ghosting them. They were counting on the cash for the renovation, and the project was already halfway done, but I ended up going back on my word. My husband just spilled the beans. Absolutely. He totally did that. I seriously considered giving him a good smack on the head. He let her know that I was aware of the reality, that she had been taking advantage of me for financial gain all along, and that the funds were meant for my sister's wedding, which is why I decided to sever ties with them. I was really frustrated about this because I wanted them to face consequences for dealing with this scam. But my husband messed it all up. He also mentioned to her that we were aware she had fabricated the story about the knee transplant and had instead spent that money on fixing up the house. After that call, my mom flooded my phone with a barrage of apologies. She claimed it was just a misunderstanding. She borrowed the money from someone for the house repairs, and now she was paying him back with my funds. It was just more nonsense. After all the calls and messages from her, I finally said I'd be willing to talk, but only if she promised to be honest with me. She was like, okay. I reached out to her and she laid it all out for me. She mentioned that my sister dreamed of a lavish wedding, but since they were short on funds, they thought it would be a good idea to ask me for the cash. My sister came up with a plan to take my money, claiming it was for the house renovation. They were aware that I hadn't been to Atlanta in ages and had lost contact with everyone, so there was no way I could have known that the house had already been renovated. I asked her why she didn't just come clean and ask me for money directly for the wedding. She mentioned that my sister wasn't interested in that. She mentioned that she wasn't comfortable accepting a favor from me directly. Whoa, did you catch that? I mentioned that I'm aware she used the funds from the knee transplant to fix up the house. She went quiet. I mentioned that I was aware of everything, so there was really no reason to keep anything under wraps. She mentioned that the house was falling apart and my sister's in-laws were eager to visit, so they needed to fix it fast. In the rush, they couldn't think of a better excuse to ask me for the money. She called me in a total panic, saying the doctor needed her to get an urgent knee transplant, and I sent the money over in just a few hours. Even though I kept my composure on the call, inside I was breaking, realizing how my own mother was manipulating me for her own benefit. I get that they're facing financial issues, but that doesn't justify their attempts to manipulate me and emotionally extort money from me. Once I got the full story, I ended the call and just broke down for hours. It's been ages since I last cried like that. perhaps around the time of my father's passing. I was really feeling his absence that day. I really thought he was the only one who truly loved and cared about me. So after 2 days, I finally got a voicemail from my mom. She was like, "Now that you know, can you please send the rest of the money so we can keep going with the wedding preparations?" I was so repulsed that I felt like I could lash out if she weren't my mom. How can she be so self-absorbed? Her tone was completely devoid of any remorse. All she was after was cash. I wasn't even invited to the wedding, not even for the sake of appearances. When the truth finally surfaced, I was so frustrated that I ended up blocking both of them. I've also made it clear to my husband that he shouldn't engage with their calls, and if he goes against my wishes this time, he'll be spending the night on the porch in the chilly weather. I'm totally serious about this. I've been chatting with my aunt, and she just mentioned that the wedding is happening next month. I kept the money details to myself, but it's clear that my mom and sister are struggling more each day to make the wedding they envisioned a reality. Nice for them. Update 3, I kept receiving calls and voicemails from my mom and sister right up until the wedding day, all asking for the money. I held my ground and didn't give in. On my wedding day, the final voicemail from my mom was filled with disappointment. She expressed her shame and declared that she was disowning me, insisting that I should never refer to her as mom or attempt to visit her again. That really bummed me out to hear. I totally broke down in front of my husband. I get that some folks might think I'm heartless and stubborn for messing up my sister's big day. My mom went off on me, labeling me as arrogant and self-centered, but she never considered the lies she tells. I've been played this whole time thinking I was doing the right thing by helping them out of obligation. I see them as family, but to them, I was just a source of income. So on the wedding day, I got a call from my friend whose husband happened to be my sister's wedding planner. She mentioned that the wedding was probably going to be called off since they weren't keeping up with the next payments for the expenses. I asked her what the payment was, and she said it was 20 around. I think 20K is plenty for a nice wedding. She said yes, but my sister had already ordered some amazing decorations and food. The chosen location ended up costing about 20K. She wanted to know if I was going. I told them I couldn't make it because I had other things to take care of. My friend was aware that my relationship with my mom and sister wasn't exactly tight. Honestly, I was feeling pretty down because I messed up my sister's wedding. For a second, I considered sending the leftover money to my friend and having her carry on with the wedding plans as originally intended. Then it hit me, my mom's final voicemail where she said she was done with me, saying, "Why put in so much effort for them when, in the end, you just get cast aside?" Sure, my actions weren't great, but they were a response to the provocation I faced. I turned off my phone and took my kids out for a day to keep myself occupied. The following day, my friend hit me up again. She was really upset with my sister since the wedding ended up tarnishing her husband's reputation in the market. On the wedding day, mom and sister begged her husband to set up something really basic for the ceremony, even offering to chip in an extra $10,000. He managed to pull together some good food and decorations, considering that the 20K advance pretty much took care of the venue costs. So the guest and the groom's family totally ripped apart the wedding arrangements, and my sister just laid all the blame on the wedding planner. She went on to say that the planner totally ruined everything for everyone. My friend mentioned that her husband was really upset and wanted to spill the beans, but my mom begged him not to ruin my sister's life. He was a decent guy who quietly accepted the blame and allowed the wedding to proceed. And to make matters worse, they still haven't paid the promised 10K. I was totally cringing when I found out this about my family. I just stayed quiet and didn't say a word. My friend mentioned that she wasn't placing any blame on me. She was simply expressing her frustration as a friend. I was really bummed that my family had to deal with that kind of embarrassment, but honestly, I was also cringing at how they just dumped all the blame on the wedding planner. After hearing all this, my husband was like, they got what was coming to them, and I shouldn't stress too much about it. They really did this to themselves by trying to show off with fake stuff. I'm really happy that I steer clear of them and their schemes. Honestly, I see my mother's disownment as a hidden blessing. I'm just relieved to be free from all the lies and manipulative games. All right, let's dive into the next tale. Story 2. So my husband just came clean about being in love with my sister, and honestly, I've had my suspicions for years. So my husband spilled the beans yesterday while he was drunk, saying he's in love with my sister. I'm not sure if I should actually consider this or if it's just something that happened while under the influence. So last night, we grabbed a dinner with my sister and her husband, and let me tell you, we definitely indulged in some drinks. Once my sister and her husband departed, my husband and I got intimate. We weren't feeling tired at all, so we kept sipping on some wine while music played softly in the background. It was just perfect, or so I thought. My husband was totally vibing and in a great mood. He totally acts like that every time he's had a few too many. We had a discussion about my sister and her husband. Out of nowhere, he just blurted out that he's totally in love with sister's name. Wait, what did I just hear? He said he's totally head over heels for sister's name, and he can't stop thinking about what it would be like to kiss her. She's absolutely brilliant. He had that dreamy look and was still grinning. I asked, just how intoxicated are you right now? He mentioned there were likely a lot. I was wasted too, but man, it hit me hard out of nowhere. I just sat there in silence while, and he was lost in his own thoughts, a smile on his face, looking like he was a million miles away. I hit the hay. This morning, all those memories came flooding back. And now that I'm sober, what he said really hits different. I'm completely devastated and my heart feels shattered. He hasn't brought it up at all and seems to be acting like everything's fine, though he might be nursing a hangover. I'm feeling a bit lost right now. He's always gotten along well with my sister, and there's a solid mutual respect between them. Should I just brush off what he said while he was drunk? Was he just being wasted or what? Should I just sit back and let him make the first move? I'm not convinced he even recalls it. What happened with the intimacy we shared? There was something unique about it, and even though I adored the experience, I genuinely believed it was among the best encounters I've ever had. He stood out, full of passion, warmth, and affection, constantly expressing his love and admiration, saying things like, "I love you, you're amazing." My sister has always been pretty laid back and a bit of a tomboy, but she's dropped 25 kilos and has been hitting the gym for a year now. She rocked a stunning red dress yesterday, complete with bold red lips. She was absolutely gorgeous, and we couldn't help but shower her with compliments. She was totally stoked about it. I'm not sure why I added this, but I figured it might be important. For sure, wait until he's feeling better and can actually process things. I'm really conflicted about that old saying that suggests intoxicated minds reveal sober thoughts. I honestly feel like alcohol really clouds judgment and messes with clear thinking and decision-making. Honestly, I'm not sure how much I buy the idea that alcohol by itself could lead someone's husband to confess feelings for their sister. Do you really think you can move past this, no matter how much he insists those feelings aren't real? I have a feeling he's going to reject that idea. If I were in that situation, I wouldn't feel at ease with my husband and sister sharing the same space again. And that's definitely not a healthy dynamic for a marriage. It seems like he was likely just caught up in the heat of the moment, showing some desire for OP's sister. Honestly, let's get real. It's interesting how, for a lot of folks, when they let their guard down and have a few drinks, those two feelings tend to merge into one. For a lot of folks, there's often a tendency to confuse their desire for someone or something with love for that reason. Still, OP really should sit down and have an honest conversation with their partner. It's clear that no one can speak on his behalf, and even with discussions, it might be really tough for OP to progress in a relationship from this point. From what I've seen, even if this gets brushed off as mere desire, OP might end up holding on to this experience like a lingering shadow. If you're both looking to make this work, I strongly recommend considering couples counseling and individual therapy to help you both progress in a healthy way. Sending all the good vibes your way. OP, here's to a future that's looking up for you. That really sucks, and I feel for you. My ex once said, "I love you, insert my twin sister's name here." And I was like, that's my twin sister, not me. He was all, "Oh yeah, my bad, I mixed up the names." But he really didn't. He had feelings for my sister. He was with me just to get closer to my sister. You really need to have a straightforward conversation with him about this. Wasn't getting involved with you the dumbest choice if you were after your sister? I always believed no sister would ever date her sister's ex, but then she went ahead and did just that. It's wild considering we grew up in a pretty messed up household, with our parents constantly comparing us and pitting us against one another. The dynamics between us were never the best. Honestly, I totally see your point. Most of the time, that's just not the best approach. Honestly, a way better approach would have been to befriend their siblings instead of getting involved with them, but I guess he wasn't really thinking straight. Haha, this is just excruciating to get through. You really need to have that talk today. Is he really just pretending like nothing went down? Do you really think they forgot saying that? I totally get it. When you're tipsy, the real thoughts come out. Have you ever noticed anything about how people act around her that made you stop and think? Just go for it and make sure you're looking right at him. His response will reveal quite a bit. He's always had a thing for my sister. He gets along with my entire family and his buddies with my brothers, but it's my sister who really has his attention, and we're super tight with her and her husband. We hang out a lot, especially when it's not just the two of us, but my sister has always been my best friend. So it would have been totally normal for him to just say he loves her. It might just be a tipsy moment if he genuinely likes her as a person and expresses it like that. At worst, it could be an innocent crush, but nothing beyond that maybe. But he definitely made it clear how he felt, leaving no room for uncertainty. What he expressed wasn't just the ramblings of a drunken state, it was a well-articulated thought filled with deep emotion, surfacing only because he let his guard down. Folks really let loose with some wild takes when they've had a few too many. It's pretty rare for someone to openly declare their love for another without there being some kind of connection or reason behind it. I'd totally just throw it out there and watch how he reacts. That'll give you all the insight you need. Hey everyone, just a quick update. The update rules state that it takes 3 days. I did an update on Sunday when I chatted with my husband, and that's the reason why. Honestly, I'm feeling pretty torn about this. I had a conversation with my husband, and he mentioned that he doesn't recall much from that night, particularly after my sister and her husband departed and we kept on drinking. I mentioned what he said, and he didn't seem shocked or surprised at all. He just claimed he didn't recall saying anything. I asked him if he was feeling it before we kicked off the drinking session. He mentioned that he has always had feelings for my sister due to her kindness and warmth. So he mentioned that he found her really beautiful, and maybe his tipsy self just thought she was super attractive. He mentioned that it's totally normal for people to be curious about the opposite sex. He mentioned that he always found her beautiful since my family is generally good looking, but her weight loss boosted her confidence, and she appeared happy, which made him happy for her too. I asked him to choose between us, and he looked totally taken aback. He said I was his wife and the mother of his kids, and that he loved me. So I pointed out that if he just met us, I wasn't really his wife or anything, and my sister wasn't married either. He mentioned that this was becoming absurd, and he disliked engaging in hypothetical discussions because people get overly emotional and argue about things that don't matter. After dinner, he expressed his love for me and reassured me that he was happy, urging me not to overanalyze what he said when he was too inebriated to even recognize who or where he was. I can't help but keep thinking about you in this situation. I've seen what you've said. I really think it would be beneficial for you to consider seeing a therapist on your own as well. It would gnaw at me. To what extent did the need to keep some level of access to her, no matter how restricted, factor into his choice to remain with you? My mind just can't wrap around the idea of how he would be intimate with her while using your body as a stand-in for his feelings for your sister. Those last two would be stuck on repeat in my mind forever. Even thinking about reaching a point of sharing intimacy with him, my mind just couldn't get to a place where I could let go and truly feel that connection. I'd definitely be making some comparisons. I'd be stuck in my thoughts, analyzing every move and response endlessly. I'd feel totally out of place and constantly worried about not measuring up. With ADHD, my mind could never accept that it wasn't merely an act. My sister and I are super tight, and we literally live just 2 minutes apart. Oh, trust me, I've definitely considered that. It seems like he might have settled for the next best option of being family or friends with her. I can't stop overthinking every single interaction and every time he brings her up. It's always in a positive light. He's always in a good mood when chatting about her or with her. Does he feel the same way about me? I'm not sure. Is this for real? Am I just overthinking this? I can't see how you can come back from this. It's going to linger in your mind forever. Stand up for yourself and trust your instincts. He does. He's finally come clean about it for me. He's been into my sister for quite a while now. He told me he loves me and the life we share. We're starting counseling and moving forward. When I spend time with my sister, he won't be around. He claimed he's totally in love with her. He mentioned that it has come and gone over the years. He's always been clear about not wanting to act on those feelings, and that's not going to change.